The notification lit up Mark's phone at 2:47 a.m. His fingers, clumsy with exhaustion and grief, had typed the words his heart had been screaming for months: "I miss you so much. I don't know how to do this anymore." He hit send, then collapsed back onto his daughter's bed, where he'd been sitting for the past 3 hours, watching her sleep and wondering how he was supposed to be both mother and father to a 6-year-old who still asked when mommy was coming home. It wasn't until morning, when his phone buzzed with a response, that Mark's blood turned to ice. The message wasn't from his sister, wasn't from his support group, wasn't from any of the people who might understand. It was from Jennifer Caldwell, his boss. The woman who signed his paychecks. The regional director who'd just promoted him 6 months ago, right before everything fell apart. "Oh God," Mark whispered, staring at her reply, "I'm here if you need to talk." His thumb hovered over the delete button, over a frantic apology, over a resignation letter he could type right there in his messages. But little Sophie was calling from her room, and the school bus would arrive in 40 minutes, and there were lunches to pack and permission slips to sign and a million tiny emergencies that made up their new normal. The text to his boss would have to wait. Mark had been a single father for 8 months. Cancer had taken his wife Rachel on a Tuesday in May, and he still couldn't walk past the hospital without his chest tightening. Their life insurance helped with bills, but it couldn't help with the loneliness, couldn't teach him how to braid hair or explain why Sophie's best friend suddenly wouldn't play with her or know what to say when his daughter sobbed that she'd forgotten what her mother's voice sounded like. Work had become his sanctuary and his nightmare. He was good at his job, marketing analytics for a mid-sized tech firm, but lately, he'd been missing deadlines, zoning out in meetings, leaving at 4:30 sharp no matter what fire needed putting out. He'd used up all his bereavement leave, all his sick days, and was now eating into vacation time for every parent-teacher conference and pediatrician appointment. Jennifer had been understanding, but Mark could feel the patience wearing thin. This text might be the final straw. He dropped Sophie at school, then sat in his car in the office parking lot for 15 minutes, rehearsing his apology. When he finally made it to his desk, there was a note: "Please see me when you arrive, J.C." The walk to her office felt like a funeral march. Jennifer Caldwell was in her early 40s, always impeccably dressed, with a reputation for being fair but formidable. Mark had worked under her for 3 years and could count on one hand the number of personal conversations they'd had. She was professional, distant, efficient, everything a good boss should be and nothing more. "Close the door," she said when he appeared. Mark's palms were sweating. "Ms. Caldwell, about that text. How long have you been struggling?" She interrupted. The question caught him off guard. What? The missed deadlines. The exhaustion. The circles under your eyes." Her voice was softer than he'd ever heard it. "How long, Mark?" His throat tightened. "I'm managing. I just need to." That wasn't an answer. Something in her tone broke through his defenses. Maybe it was the sleepless nights, maybe it was the weight of pretending he had it all together, but Mark felt everything spill out. He told her about Sophie's nightmares, about burning dinner 3 times last week, about sitting in his car during lunch breaks just to cry where his daughter couldn't see. He told her about the loneliness, the fear that he was failing, the crushing weight of being the only parent his child had left. When he finished, Jennifer was quiet for a long moment. Then she said something that shocked him. "My daughter was 7 when my husband left. I raised her alone for 6 years before I met my current partner." Mark stared at her. In 3 years, he'd never known she had children. "I made it through," Jennifer continued, "but barely. I had no family nearby, no support system, and a job that demanded 60-hour weeks. I remember thinking that if one more thing went wrong, I'd shatter into pieces too small to put back together." She paused. "That text you sent last night. I've written versions of it 100 times. I just never had the courage to send them. I didn't mean to. I know. But I'm glad you did." She opened her desk drawer and pulled out a folder. "I'm putting you on a modified schedule effective immediately. You'll work from home Mondays and Fridays. Your project load is being redistributed. And I'm connecting you with our employee assistance program. They have resources for single parents. You don't have to." "Mark." Her eyes were firm but kind. "You're drowning. And I'm not going to watch it happen when I can throw you a life preserver." That Friday evening, Mark was attempting to cook spaghetti while helping Sophie with homework when his doorbell rang. On his porch stood Jennifer Caldwell, holding grocery bags and wearing jeans, something he'd never imagined possible. "What are you doing here?" he asked, stunned. "You mentioned Sophie had a school project due Monday and you didn't know how to help her build a diorama." "I raised a daughter. I know how to hot glue tiny trees." She held up the bags. "Also, I brought actual dinner because I'm guessing that's burning." "Oh no." Mark rushed to the kitchen, where smoke was indeed rising from the pot. Over the next 2 hours, Jennifer helped Sophie create a miniature rainforest ecosystem while Mark salvaged dinner. She was patient with Sophie's questions, encouraging with her ideas, and natural in a way that made Mark realize how much his daughter had been missing female guidance. As she was leaving, Sophie hugged her goodbye, something his reserved daughter rarely did with adults. At the door, Mark tried to find words. "Why are you doing this?" he finally asked. Jennifer smiled, a real smile he'd never seen at work. "Because someone did it for me once. A neighbor I barely knew showed up with casseroles and offered to babysit. She said she'd been where I was and knew I needed help more than I needed pride." She touched his shoulder. "You're a good father, Mark. And good fathers shouldn't have to do it alone." Over the following months, Jennifer became an unexpected fixture in their lives. She taught Sophie to ride a bike, helped Mark navigate the maze of single-parent support groups, and showed up on the anniversary of Rachel's death with flowers and the phone number of her own therapist. The office noticed the change. Jennifer started a company initiative for working parents. Mark's modified schedule became a template others could use. The culture shifted, became more human, more understanding that sometimes life required flexibility that spreadsheets couldn't capture. One evening, as Mark tucked Sophie into bed, his daughter said, "I like Ms. Jennifer. She reminds me a little bit of mommy, not the same, but in the way she makes things feel safe." Mark's eyes burned with tears. "Yeah, sweetheart. Me too." That night, he sent Jennifer a text, this time on purpose, "Thank you for showing up. You saved us." Her response came quickly, "You saved yourselves. I just held the door open." But Mark knew better. Sometimes salvation came in unexpected forms. Sometimes it wore business casual and showed up on your doorstep. When a misdirected message revealed the truth we're all too afraid to say. That we're struggling, that we need help, that being human means being vulnerable. And sometimes, just sometimes, kindness responded not with judgment but with groceries and hot glue guns and the quiet promise that you don't have to carry the weight alone anymore.